Hey everybody, it's Chris Jolly here from NovaHoops.com. I'm here to talk girls basketball. I'm here to talk Class 6 regional tournaments, 6D, 6C, and 6B up here in Northern Virginia. These are all Northern Virginia teams fighting to survive. Each region has 8 teams, and only 2 teams from each region will qualify for the Class 6 state tournament. It's going to be hotly contested. These tournaments, there are so many good teams up here in girls basketball. Anything can really happen. The classes have their favorites. The districts have their favorites. The regions have their favorites. But really, anything can happen. So we'll see what happens. We're going to give you a preview of the action next week. This week, if it's anything like last week, it's going to be just some fantastic basketball. Let's start with 6D, or the Northern region. You can see it there on your screen. Now, this is the Liberty District and the Concord District. Right away, when I say Concord District, that district is loaded. Last week, Oakton won the district tournament, which was highly significant. The Cougars were the 4th seed, but they went through the competition. They beat Westfield. They beat defending state champion Madison by 1 point. And then they beat South Lakes, who they had lost to twice this year. They beat them by 10 points. So Oakton's win was very significant, number one, because Fred Priester's team got to enjoy a Concord District title and his team. Number two, however, it gave them the number 1 seed in the region out of the Concord. Now, the Liberty also gets a number 1 seed on the other end of the bracket there, but Oakton's was highly significant because they would have been the 4th seed had they lost to Madison in that first game. Instead, they now have a home game against the 6th best in the regular season team in the Liberty District, Marshall. Now, Marshall upset Herndon in the Liberty tournament, 6-3. And Marshall's no pushover by any means. They've been getting better and better, and their freshman, Adora Nwood, is one of the best freshmen in the area. Marshall is no pushover, but Oakton is very happy they won the Concord District. They get Marshall at home in the first round of the 6D regional tournament, which is nice. Should they get past Marshall, would face the winner of South Lakes and Langley. So that's not going to be an easy matchup either for Oakton if they can get past Marshall. But it's a lot easier, I think, than the other side of that bracket. If you look at Centerville over there, Centerville lost to South Lakes in the first round of the tournament. I should say the semifinals of that tournament. Their road is much harder as the 4th seed out of the Concord. They have to start with McLean, who are the district champions. Back to the bottom half of that bracket with Marshall and Oakton. Oakton's been playing really well. They've got to love that they have a home game. They should be able to control pace in that Marshall game. They should be able to do what they need to do and limit Marshall in the half court. As I mentioned, Marshall has been improving rapidly, though. Oakton can't take him lightly. But Oakton, the strong favorite in that first round game. Now, South Lakes and Langley, that should be one of the more fun first round matchups there. Langley tied with McLean, only losing once in the district, atop that district, before McLean defeated Langley last week in the district championship. Anya Rahman there for Langley, she had 30 points in that game, and Langley still lost. So that tells you Langley has to get balanced scoring. They have to get some scoring out of their other kids, and they have to play defense. They didn't limit McLean too well defensively in that game, and as a result, they suffered. But Langley gets the home game against South Lakes and Jess Dornack. Jess Dornack, a senior post player, one of the best post players in the area. Langley will focus their defense a little bit on her. So it's really up to the other South Lakes players like Renee Timbers and some of those other girls They're going to have to score. They're going to have to score in the half court against Langley's defense, which traditionally is very good come playoff time. It wasn't great last Friday, but you have to think it'll be a lot better come Tuesday. But South Lakes is going to have to get scoring. They're going to have to get some consistent scoring. They don't score all that much. Against Oakton, they scored 32 points in their loss there. So they're going to probably have to get up more towards 40 and then play good defense themselves on Langley, which they're very capable of doing to win that game. You have to think Langley has a slight edge, but that's going to be just because of the home court advantage. That's a toss-up game right there. It's going to be one of the better games. Now, up to the top of the region, Wakefield, who has been quietly having a pretty good year. They finished 4th in the Liberty District. Oh, I'm sorry, 5th in the Liberty District, tied with Washington Liberty. Defeated Washington Liberty in the Liberty District tournament. Liberty, Liberty, Liberty. They've had a pretty good year. Maya Solis is a very underrated guard. Wakefield has a good squad over there, but they got to go to Madison. The defending 3-time state champion, Madison Warhawks, who won the Concord regular season title, but as we mentioned, slipped up to Oakton. But man, Wakefield's got a tough task going to Madison. Madison, even though they lost in the semis of the Concord, it's in Fairfax County. If you're the regular season champion, you can do no worse than the 2nd seed from your district. So that's why Madison is technically the 2nd seed out of that district and gets a home game. Wakefield, you better get to the rim and you better draw fouls. And other than that, you're going to have a hard time. So, as we mentioned earlier, Centerville, by technically finishing as the 4th seed out of the Concord District, gets a really just a monster road to try and get to the state tournament. They've got to go at McLean. McLean is red hot. As we mentioned, they won the Liberty tournament. They look like a completely different team than the team I saw in December. Langley defeat them comfortably by about 20 points or so. They look good. Their young kids have really stepped up. Their sophomores to supplement Kara Bremser and Shushan Krikorian. They're 2 fantastic seniors. They're on an 11-game win streak. They're at home. Now, I will say that we've seen time and time again teams get hot, win the district, and then kind of flame out in regionals, kind of reach their peak. But, man, it doesn't look like McLean's going to do that, though. This is a fantastic game, another fantastic game. Centerville, it could be a state champion. They're that good. They're the 4th seed. Their road is now tough. They're very deep. As is McLean, so that's just going to be a fun game. You would think it would be fairly high scoring, but we'll see. I mean, McLean's defense has definitely kicked it up a notch in the last month. So we'll see. Centerville at McLean. If Centerville's going to get there, they're going to have to go through McLean and then presumably at Madison. They're going to have to win 2 road games. So that's going to be tough. That 2nd round game, if the seeds hold, would be McLean and Madison. That game would be played at McLean. So that's something to keep in mind as well. McLean, probably earlier in the season, you wouldn't think they could beat Madison. Maybe they can now. Centerville, if they get past McLean, has already proven they can beat Madison. They have a win against the Warhawks. So that's going to be fun. And as I said, get a look at Wakefield when you get a chance. Maya Solis. They've got some players. They've got some guards that can really get to the hoop. We'll see against Madison, though. Who do I like in this region? Man, that's a tough one. We said it before the year. I've said it throughout the year, however. Until somebody beats Madison, knocks them off. Now, Madison has been knocked off a couple times by Oakton in this district and in their region, by Centerville in this district, in their region. But until they lose, they're my favorite. They're always going to be my favorite. I think they win this region. I give them a lukewarm. I think they're going to win this region because the region is so loaded. What I would like to see out of them, they lack the dominance of the Arnolis that they had last year. Those two could just take over games. I want to see more of it out of players like Sarah Link. Sarah Link out of Madison is just a fantastic player. She's strong, she's tall, she can shoot, she's smart, she can do it all. Now it's time for players like that to do it all, though, if the Warhawks are going to survive this region. So that'll be fun. Now let's talk about the Occoquan region. Occoquan region has 8 teams left. They've actually been playing their regionals. Everybody gets into their regionals. They've been actually playing their regionals while their district tournament goes on. Teams that get eliminated early have to go right in the regionals and play. But now we have our final 8 teams. So as you can see right there, there you go. Those are your 8 teams left in the Occoquan region. 3 from the National District, 5 from the Patriot District. Patriot District has been having their way in the early part of the regionals, but Hayfield did defeat Fairfax to make their way into the final 8. Mount Vernon and Edison were there by virtue of making the championship game of the National District Tournament. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Edison. Wow, what a year for Edison. I think they're 20-5. Is this a good Edison team? I mean, it's a pretty good Edison team. They obviously had their coaching turmoil at the start of the year, but then Diane Lewis came back, righted the ship. The kids are excited. They look good of late. They've looked particularly good. In the championship game against Mount Vernon, they essentially doubled the major score. That defense of theirs, when it's rolling, when they make a few baskets, and when they set up their full court, when they set up their defense, few teams do it like Edison. So, but again, we haven't seen Edison really prove themselves too much yet this year. We haven't seen Edison beat the top teams really too much this year. So there's question marks about Edison, but their path to states is a good one. So they're going to be at home. They're the National District champions. If somebody's going to take them out, they got to do it at Edison. So SoCo gets the first step, and SoCo, they were the ace seed in the Patriot District, finished last in the Patriot District, but man, they're the best ace-seeded team that ever was, we think. We've watched them a couple times. We watched them against W.T. Woodson, which turned out to be the 5th seed from the Patriot District. SoCo beat Woodson in the later part of last week. SoCo beat Woodson to advance to this spot. Number one, we saw them play Woodson and beat Woodson earlier this year. SoCo scored 76 points. So you don't see that too much on the girls' side of things. SoCo's got some firepower. Now, the question is, once Edison scores and their veterans score and set up their press, is SoCo going to be able to handle it? Is SoCo going to be able to? They've got a lot of youth. Are they going to be ready for a team like Edison that has a lot of playoff experience? Edison with Tony McRae and Aniak and Akins, they're going to be tough. So we'll see. I don't know. SoCo is probably the most dangerous 8 seed you could ever play, though. So Edison, we'll see. They should get past South County, but we'll see. And that matchup that right below them with West Potomac and Lake Braddock, wow. In the district tournament, the Patriot District tournament last week, if you were paying attention to this game, you got an awful, awful treat if you watch this game. West Potomac was beating Lake Braddock 37-11, and Lake Braddock came back to win. Wow is all you can say. Lake Braddock's been getting better and better. We kind of forecast them. We had them in our Nova 19 at the start of the year. That turned out to be a little optimistic at first. But the Bruins and Coach Reed have played one of the hardest schedules around, and it's built them up. They look like they're ready to go. From a team standpoint, they're playing really well. I think in the win against West Potomac, their freshman kids who play a role and are in their rotation, scored 20 points. The other night, I think it was in a different game, however, against Alexandria City, I believe, in the first round of the district tournament. Senior Tina Vaughn put down 30. And of course, this team is known for really its juniors, like Sarah Pritz, who was the district player of the year last year. So Lake Braddock, they took some losses early in the year, but they're looking dangerous now. They're playing as a team. They get to play West Potomac, who, man, they got to be looking for revenge after that game is all I can say. And we know about West Potomac. They're a very good team, guard-oriented team. But ever since they got Julia Hopper back from injury, who is one of their more reliable front court players, they've been very good. They've been winning a lot of games. But West Potomac, a little inconsistent, as last week clearly demonstrates. They've beaten some really good teams. They've beaten Robinson, and yet they've lost to some teams they shouldn't have this year. So West Potomac Lake Braddock is going to be fantastic. I don't know what's going on in the psyche of those kids after the game they played last week, but we'll find out shortly. The winner of that gets Edison. If Edison can get by SoCo, which that should be a fantastic game as well. So there's the top half of that bracket. Bottom half of the bracket, you got Robinson down there, and Robinson is looking very good. They did lose to West Potomac, as I mentioned, but that was a 2-point loss, and that was their only district loss. They're a loaded team, featuring Caroline Shimp and Georgia Simonson in the front court. Their backcourt doesn't score a ton, but they're very athletic, they're very active, and they're very, very good. Especially Amelia Simonson, Georgia's sister, very, very good defensively. They're going to be tough. They're opening up with West Springfield, who kind of has all of the ingredients, but doesn't necessarily score a ton. I'm not sure they have the offensive firepower to upset Robinson, but they are good, and obviously with Billy Gibson, they're a well-coached team. So those two will open up down there. The winner of that will get Hayfield and Mount Vernon, which is interesting. As we mentioned, Hayfield, the only national district team to survive regionals and the Patriot District. They beat Fairfax 45-32, a good win for them. They're extremely young. If you haven't seen them yet, they've won some games. They have some very young talent that's good. Alexis Cox, their freshman guard, is fantastic. But she is a freshman, and they're going up against Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon has some good wins this year. They have a win over West Potomac. They have a win over Edison. They're a good team. They're led by Litzy Gonzalez, who has WNBA-type range. If you haven't seen her shoot, you've been missing something. She's a player. And they're very physical and well-coached, and they play great defense. So Mount Vernon... Well, let me qualify that. They don't always play great defense, but they can play good pressure defense, and they can out-physical teams. Mount Vernon beat Hayfield twice during the regular season, so you have to figure Mount Vernon is the favorite. But I'll tell you right now, Hayfield is capable of beating them. So we'll see what happens in that game. You would think the winner gets Robinson, and as far as predictions go, I mean, you'd be a fool to not predict Robinson to win this tournament. They won it last year, defeating Edison. They should win it this year, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Keep an eye on the top half of that bracket, West Potomac and Lake Braddock, and the winner of that presumably will get Edison. I'm sorry, SoCo. I'm shorting you a little bit, but you are a significant favorite going into that game. So it should be a fun bracket. So our final region is 6B. As I mentioned, I don't even know what they call that region, but it has the teams from the Cardinal District and the Cedar Run District. It's going to be a good district. It's going to be a good regional fight. It features our most highly ranked public school team around Osborne Park. Osborne Park fell, Chrissy Kelly's team, in the state final last year to Madison, 37-29, but a lot of their team, Alana Powell, Cole, Alex Brown, their center, returned this year, and they've got an infusion of freshman talent. They're looking like the real deal. Before the year, we thought that was our favorite to at least return from Northern Virginia to the Class 6 state final. Nothing has changed. They're, as I mentioned, our most highly ranked team currently in the public school ranks. They defeated Gainesville, who is a very, very good team, for the third time this year in the district tournament. Last week in the district final by 10 points, really controlling that game for most of the time. Very impressive. Osborne Park is looking very sharp. They're clearly the favorites in the region, but we'll see. Anything can happen. They've been tripped up. One of the teams that did trip them up earlier in the year, Patriot, is in this region. So we'll see. Let's talk about the top half of that bracket first. Let's talk about Potomac and Patriot. That's the game we'll probably go see tomorrow early at Potomac, part of a doubleheader. The Potomac guys will be playing after. Patriot at Potomac will be a very good one. Potomac went undefeated in the Cardinal District regular season this year before getting upset by Freedom Woodbridge in the district tournament, 35-30. However, in that district, you retained the number one seed going into regionals. So Potomac was still the first seeded team out of the Cardinal. They host Patriot, who finished third in the Cedar Run, but as we mentioned, does have a win over Osborne Park this year. Now, Patriot has three players that are just fantastic. Ella Negron, who once she gets back towards the basket at all, once she seals you on that block, you're dead. She's going to score. Addison Banks, who is an athletic guard forward who can do it all. She can play some point guard. She can hurt you down low. She can shoot. She's a very good player. And Sydney Smith, their dynamic guard. That gives them a trio of very experienced players that can hurt you in a lot of ways. It's going to be a big test for Potomac. But the Panthers do have the home court advantage. They've got the Cardinal District Player of the Year in Lajayla Lipscomb, who is a fantastic player, who can also limit Ella Negron down on the block a little bit. So we'll see how that turns out. It's not just her either. They've got great young players like Taylor Allen and what's her name? Gosh, I forgot. Puller. There are two fantastic sophomores down there. Excuse me for forgetting your name there. I do forget names. But those two are great players if you haven't seen them play. So we're really looking forward to Patriot Potomac. Have no idea which way that one will go, but it'll be a big game. The winner will probably take on Gainesville, unless Freedom Woodbridge, who, as we mentioned, defeated Potomac in the district tournament. So Freedom Woodbridge, very capable, getting better and better as the year goes on. They also, like Potomac, have a few sophomores that are very talented but young. So we'll see what that does against Gainesville, though, whose only 3 losses on the year have been to Osborne Park. Osborne Park has been their kryptonite. They feature one of the area's, Northern Virginia's best players in Madison McKenzie, and they have lots of young talent. They're tall and physical. You just wonder about them sometimes scoring in the half court against teams that play an aggressive half court defense like Osborne Park. So we'll see. But Gainesville is going to be very tough at the top half of this bracket to take down. They are the favorites in the top half. They've handled Patriot 3 times already this year. So whereas Osborne Park might be Gainesville's kryptonite, Gainesville is Patriot's kryptonite. So we'll see. And Patriot, of course, Gainesville might also, if they beat Freedom Woodbridge, get Potomac as well. So we'll see about that. Bottom half of the bracket, you're looking at Osborne Park. Now, Woodbridge has had a good year. Woodbridge lost a ton of talent in Amani Melendez and others, and they started off very slowly, but they've gotten better. They finished second in the district, Cardinal District regular season, and they've been improving rapidly. They have a lot of legitimate young talent. Their guards are legitimately very good, but they are young, And they're going up against Osborne Park, which is a juggernaut. It's very hard for me to see any kind of upset by Woodbridge over Osborne Park. But we'll see. Anything can happen. A great game plan, and some shots aren't falling, and who knows. So, you would expect Osborne Park to advance out of the game. The same goes for Colgan. They'll be facing a Colonial Forge team that by no means is a bad team, but it's one that finished under 500. Colgan has already beaten this team this year by double figures. But Colgan doesn't have the greatest margin of error. They play hard, and they're a very good team. Got a great win, two really great wins when they defeated Woodbridge, and then they defeated Freedom Woodbridge to win the Cardinal District Tournament. They're a very good team. I love their players. A.J. Jones, if you don't know this kid, wow, just fun to watch. One of the area's best rebounders, aggressive. Colgan can play. Now, Colgan doesn't have a huge margin for error. They don't have, that scoring threat that they've had in years past with Alyssa Andrews. Of course, who does? You don't get an Alyssa Andrews that often, and nobody. But they don't have that scoring threat that can necessarily, carry a game for them. They just have a lot of very good players that play hard and play good defense. As long as they do that, though, they should take care of Colonial Forge. And then they'll play Osborne Park. And believe me, Colgan won't back down against Osborne Park.